Situations where a wife seeks new experiences in her personal life can lead to unexpected consequences, especially if she finds comfort in someone else's arms. In this story, we will hear the story of a husband who found out that his wife was cheating on him and how he decided to get revenge for the cheating. How my wife was looking for a new experience and ended up finding adventures on her ass, but didn't foresee that it would lead to cheating, and how I got back at her for it. Vitaly and Eugenia had known each other since they were 16 years old. They used to go out in mutual company, but at 18 their relationship took on a different character. They went to the same university and had to cross paths often. Before, they did not communicate much in the company, but at university they communicated many times more. They sat together more and more often during joint classes. And after the summer break in the second year, Vitaly asked her to go on a date. During the whole summer, he had not seen Genia even once, and he realized that he missed her. The girl did not mind. She had always liked Vitaly. What's there to hide? Absolutely every girl in their company liked him. Handsome with a good figure. Girls secretly sighed over him, but it was as if he did not notice it. Many years had passed since that first date. Genia and Vitaly got married and had a daughter. Life eats away at any relationship, even the most tender and reverent ones. And so it happened with them. After the baby was born, Genia was tired, often complained to her husband, and even cried. Vitaly helped her in any way he could, but he could not leap over his head. He also had a job and his own duties which he had to fulfill. Genia's favorite pastime was going to the club. Stunning music, rhythmic movements, and lots of alcohol. In such moments, she felt like a young girl, free and independent of anything. Often, she would return home heavily intoxicated. In the morning, her brain was usually still not thinking straight, and her memories were pathetic scraps. One day, Genia met her friend, with whom she had been in a club. She slyly winked at her and asked, "So how did you like that handsome guy? Did you exchange numbers?" "What?" Genia asked in amazement. "Did you get so hot with him on the dance floor on Saturday and then disappear?" Her friend giggled, and then a memory flashed brightly in her head. She wasn't an acquaintance, the bathroom at the club. It was dirty, quick, but very arousing. Genia went pale, said goodbye to her friend, and thought about the situation all the rest of the way home. A week later, it happened again. The club and the man were different, but the rest was the same. Alcohol, dancing, and the man. Suddenly, Genia realized that she did not want to refuse him. She wanted to give herself to him and enjoy it, and so she did. All week, Genia worked as a loving wife and mother, and on Saturday she went out. And every time, like anyone with an addiction, she told herself that she could stop it all right now. But when she couldn't break free, she got angry and snapped at her husband. Vitaly at first was not against his wife's amusement, and his wife's association with various strangers, of course, he did not know. He liked that she was resting, and the next day, rested, Genia was ready to move mountains. He thought it wouldn't last forever. But time passed, and Genia kept running around clubbing and humming. He began to notice that she often smelled of men's perfume. And then one day she showed up at home without her underwear. Vitaly was nervous. He didn't want to lose his wife. He loved her very much, and moreover they had a daughter. He, as a man who did not have a full family, all his life dreamed only that his child did not know what it was. So the husband tolerated his spouse's philandering. On another evening that he and his daughter spent together, a friend sent Vitaly some video. He was surprised, but opened the message. Turning the sound down so as not to wake the child, Vitaly pressed a play button. The video showed Genia. She was dancing. It was obvious that she was drunk. She had a blissful smile on her face. At first, Vitaly thought that was the end of it. A friend just shows seeing his wife at the club. But by the middle of the viewing, the most interesting thing had begun. A guy came up to Genia. He held out a cocktail, and she smiled at him with her most charming smile. Vitaly tensed up. The man began dancing beside Eugenia, from time to time placing his hand, then on her waist, then on her buttocks. The next moment, he saw his wife turn around and kiss the stranger. Vitaly covered the phone screen with his palm. He didn't want to look at something that right this second was ruining his life and possibly changing it forever. Accompanying the video came a text message, a text that read, "Then they went to the bathroom. I didn't follow them. I'm sorry, but you should know that." Vitaly answered his friend briefly, thanking him. And once again, he watched the video through sheer force. Everything was clear as a bell. There was no need to think about it. It was obvious that Eugenia was not just running to the clubs. Naive Vitaly assumed that he was doing Eugenia better by letting her go on vacation. But it was clear he was doing himself a bearish favor and literally every week with ease let his wife go where she happily jumped on someone. Tears tugged at his eyes. Vitaly felt sorry for himself. He felt sorry for his daughter. He regretted that he had allowed Eugenia to lead such a life. Two halves of him were fighting inside him. One was screaming for him to forgive his wife, forget everything he had seen and just move on for his daughter. But the other half begged together in reprisal for the betrayer. All night, he did not sleep, wondering what he should do next. And he fell asleep only in the morning. He woke up, shattered from his aching head, but firmly decided not to delay the conversation with Eugenia. While she slept, he took his daughter to his parents and returned home. He purposely slammed the door so loudly that his wife in the room jumped up from it. "You're kidding me. Let me sleep," she shouted. Vitaly didn't answer. He knew that his wife would not be able to sleep again, and she would have to get out of her hiding place. And that's where he would nail her. He would ask her a question that she would not be able to get away with. The conversation was hard. Vitaly showed Eugenia the video, said he knew that after that she went to the bathroom with the man. And there was no other way but to admit her guilt. She talked and talked. She said she couldn't remember how many men like that there were. Afterward, she apologized and cried, and Vitaly was silent. He listened and did not understand at what point everything took a wrong turn. And who was to blame? He. Eugenia. Life. The perfect picture in his head was crumbling. Now they would have to get a divorce, and his daughter would have to live through it. He had tried so hard for their family, and it turned out to be all in vain. And then he exploded. Usually quiet Vitaly, who tried to smooth over all their family quarrels, suddenly began to shout, called his wife by the last words, and even broke a few things against the wall. Eugenia sat in front of him, afraid to move. She had never before in her life seen her husband in such a state. Fear had superseded shame. Now she was afraid for herself. She was afraid that her husband would throw his fist at her, though she knew in her heart he would never do that. Vitaly calmed down, grabbed the car keys from the dresser, and left. He needed some time alone with himself and got over it. He filed for divorce as soon as he could. The apartment they lived in was his, so Eugenia was put out the door with all her belongings. The daughter was still too young to understand what was going on. But 6 months later, Vitaly took her away from his ex-wife because she started drinking a lot. Eugenia was disappointed in herself, and tired of drowning out this feeling with alcohol, she had to resort to the help of specialists. She understood that she couldn't cope with all that was waiting on her by herself. Now she knows that any deception is sooner or later exposed, and then it hurts everyone. Second story. The wife was looking for passion, but didn't find it with her husband. When the husband came home early, he didn't expect to see such a scene. His wife and childhood friend were cheating in front of him. But that's just the beginning of their cheating story, which shocked him and left us wondering how the husband handled the situation and how he punished the cheater. In this video, we'll tell first-hand stories of cheating, including this one, and analyze how people react to betrayal and how they rebuild their relationship after such a severe shock. Sometimes random encounters are not random at all, and not always they bring joy. It is only worth a closer look. Olga and Nikita had lived together for several years, but they had not married until a year ago. They had a lavish wedding, and then Nikita's grandmother kindly gave him her small apartment. The newlyweds could live separately. The life had already settled down, and the young people could not get enough of each other. After all, love is very young. They stopped seeing many of their friends, devoting their time only to each other. One day, on a warm summer day, the couple was returning from a store. On their way up to their floor, they saw that the apartment next door was open, and there were boxes of sorts in the entryway. At that moment, a broad-shouldered, smiling young man came out of the open apartment. He saw his new neighbors and immediately held out his hand to Nikita. "Hi guys, my name is Ilya. We're going to be neighbors from today." "Wow, Ilya. How many years? How many winters?" Ilya looked questioningly at the young man, and then smiled. "Nikita, wow, this is what fate has brought us together again." The guys hugged each other like good friends. Ilya stood at a loss. He explained to her that he and Ilya were old friends. They had played in the same yard as children, and now they were neighbors. Olga smiled at her friend, and he looked at his mate with admiration. The boys began to spend a lot of time together. They went to movies, restaurants, often sat at each other's houses. ED was not far away at all. The guys recalled stories from their childhood, joked a lot, and Olya just had fun in their company. Gradually, they became very close friends. But one day, this idyll was interrupted by a fourth person. One day, Ilya came to visit his neighbors with Alina, his new girlfriend. She was very sociable and always joking, immediately capturing the attention of everyone present. And Lena could support any topic of conversation, from the culture of ancient Greece to modern dance and even programming. Olga sat in her own apartment, as drenched in water, unable to resist such charisma. Nikita noticed this change in his wife's mood and put his arm around her. At the same moment, Ilya decided to kiss his beloved, and somehow Olya's mood became even more spoiled. Over the next couple of days, something strange happened to his wife. She was offended over nothing, went around in a terribly bad mood, and there was no intimate life at all. Their life has become the exact opposite of what it was just a month ago. And then Nikita's work got really busy. Every day, he began to stay for a few hours to finish projects on time. Family life slowly began to fall apart. One day after work, Nikita decided to go to a neighbor to ask his advice on how to fix things with Olya. "Friend, I really don't know what's wrong. She became so irritable and does not give a reason as such. And you had something similar with your girlfriend." But the young man was no longer listening to Ilya's answer. He saw a suspiciously familiar hairpin on the nightstand, not far from the couch. It was exactly the same one that had hit Olya when they had just started living together. She complained then that it made her uncomfortable to clean around the house. Her hair unraveled and fell on her face. Her lover brought her this beret one day with the words, "Now cleaning will become more comfortable." She looked at her fiancé and he kissed her on the cheek, took the mop from her hands and spun her into a dance. Nikita was deep in memories of that happy day, but his thought was interrupted by Ilya. "Nikita, are you okay?" A couple of minutes later, the young man was already in his house. His wife was washing the dishes at the time. Nikita came up to her and said, "Sweetheart, you're not comfortable doing the house like this. Let me get your hairpin. Where is it?" Olya shook her head toward the bedroom. The man, for the sake of purity of the experiment, went to the specified place to check, but the hairpin was not there. It wasn't in any of the other rooms either. Nikita returned to his wife and, looking straight into her eyes, said that the hairpin was missing. Now it was important to catch her reaction. Olya thought silently for a couple of seconds, then twitched a little, as if remembering something, and said, "No need, dear, I'm almost done. Look, rinsed the last plate, turned off the water, and citing fatigue, went into another room. The young husband went over in his head all the contrived quarrels of late, the aggression on the part of Olya, and his wife's refusal even to give a goodbye kiss. Nikita silently walked his wife out with a glance and thought deeply. A few weeks later, the couple received an invitation from a neighbor. Ilya had been promoted at work, an event that needed to be celebrated. Olya continued to communicate a little coldly with her husband, but she happily agreed to go to visit. In the evening, the four of them got together. Nikita with Olya and Ilya with the salty one. The table was laid and champagne was poured. The young people congratulated Ilya on his long-awaited promotion, talked and laughed a lot. His wife seemed to have thawed out, behaved very relaxed, and was having a good time. Nikita again noticed that very hairpin on the night table, and in the middle of the feast he noticed it. He turned to his wife and said, "Here's your hairpin. I wonder how it got there." Immediately the laughter stopped, and there was a dead silence in the room. My wife laughed nervously and began to babble something unintelligible. Alina looked at Ilya and had already begun to boil as he suddenly said, "Yes, we had everything. That's what you wanted to hear. I fell in love with your wife. It happens. You've always taken things better. Now it's my turn too." Nikita punched his childhood friend in the face without a second thought, and he fell out of his chair. The girls stood up and screamed nervously. Before the fight could continue, his wife took the floor. "Nikita, I'm sorry. Come on, please, don't get violent. We need to cool down." Nikita tries to calm down and slams the door and leaves his apartment. Olya helps Ilya up. She stayed with him, having decided that her husband needed to be alone. Only Alyona did not understand what to do in this strange and unexpected situation. Such an ending to the evening the girl in no way expected. So she just followed Nikita into the next apartment, not knowing where to put herself. She and he sat silently on the couch, each thinking about his own thing. Nikita was rubbing the hand that had hit his wife's lover. Suddenly, Alyona turned to the young man and said, "Let's get back at them too. Let them be just as offended. I liked you a long time ago, as soon as we met." She leaned toward the man to kiss him. Confused, at first Nikita responded to the kiss, but then pushed the girl away and said, "Oh my God, has everyone here gone crazy or what? What the hell is going on anyway? What revenge? Go away." Alyona cried and ran out of the apartment, leaving Nikita alone with his thoughts. Time passed. Olya and Nikita, of course, divorced, and she went to live with a neighbor. Fortunately, and things did not have to carry far. Nikita was left to live alone in his apartment. They tried not to cross paths with each other on the landing. One evening, when Nikita was coming home from work, he heard loud shouting and cursing in the entryway. Then the door slammed. When he got up to his floor, he realized that it was Ilya arguing with his ex-wife. Tazia was doing on the steps and crying. "Olya, what happened?" Nikita asked quietly. "Ilya and I had a terrible fight." Sneezing, she said, "You may have heard it in time. It's been going on for a long time. And now he's kicking me out the door like some kind of dog." Nikita looked at her former lover, and for a second he felt sorry for her. He helped her up and offered to wait for the resolution of the conflict. At his place over tea, the girl looked at him as if she were a savior. Was he no longer angry at her for the past? They sat in the kitchen. Nikita was making tea. Olya thoughtfully traced her finger. Then she looked up at the young man and asked, "Nikita, are you not mad at me?" The guy did not expect such a question, so he thought for a minute. "No, Olya, I'm not angry anymore. In the breakup is usually the fault of both partners. It just happened that way." Olya was so upset by the quarrel with her new lover that the words of her ex-husband really upset her. She thought that the two of them still had a chance. Nikita, Olya did not have time to finish her feelings for her ex-husband, with whom they had gone through so much together, came over her in a huge wave. She touched his face and already wanted to kiss him. But Nikita said in a cold tone, "But I have not forgiven you, Olya. Nothing more can happen between us. I'd advise you to go back to the one in whose favor you made your choice." Nikita got up from the table, headed into the corridor, and defiantly opened the door to his ex-wife to leave immediately. Olga, lowering her head and trying to hide the approaching tears, with quick steps headed for the exit. It was all over in this relationship.